And happy Friday and welcome to Career Launch Live. I am your host, Catherine McCord, and I am excited to be back with you. Sorry about last week. We had a last minute cancellation, but I'm very excited to be back today. We're going to be talking today about a very important topic that a lot of people have a lot of confusion around. And that topic is getting personal at work. What should you do? What shouldn't you do? What's HR friendly? What's not? Let's get busy. Let's discuss it. I have a wonderful guest. Bring her on, introduce herself, Miss Tisha. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you so much, Catherine, for having me. It's always awesome to be on your show.
And I love that you're in Texas today because that is my home state. And so I'm a little jealous, actually.
Yeah, I think you told me that before. So I'm like, yeah, I do remember that. I love Texas, though. I'm from Mississippi originally, but yeah, Texas is home for me now.
Still the deep South. Still
deep South.
So tell us about you.
So I'm Tisha. I go by Tisha. My name is Antisha Walley, but everybody calls me Tisha. I have been in the HR profession for 12 years now, and I absolutely love it. If anyone ever asks me, if you could do anything else, what would you do? And it's like, nothing, because this is what I was born for. So I absolutely love it. I actually own a consulting business, which is Make the Change LLC. We provide human capital management support to businesses. We are a federal contractor, so we work with the federal government as well. And we like
that's tough.
Podcast and share things with people about the world of HR.
That's right. Lots of knowledge is flowing through your mind, and we're going to get as much of it out as we can.
Absolutely.
Yeah, today. So, and it's really cool. So you on LinkedIn, which is a great meeting place. People really underestimate the and the opportunities you have to learn to network, that type of thing. It's really fascinating. And I want to
sleep on LinkedIn. Y'all are sleeping on LinkedIn.
Wake up and get on some LinkedIn. You really need to, trust me. Oh, what I do want to throw out, this is a rare recorded episode. So we respond live to your comments, but we will be circling back to respond to them when the episode airs. So we will still answer your questions. So feel free to comment any questions that you have, and we will respond to you. It is live. So just so you know. All right. So let's dive into it. I love conversations about this on LinkedIn from non-HR folks, people that really probably shouldn't be giving the advice. Out there talking about get at work and all of this. So let's talk about it. Let's start with what you're suddenly wanting to get more personal at work. Because for years it was don't get personal, keep personal at home and business at business. Why are people trying to get more personal?
I think because people realize that it matters, right? You can't separate the two. As much as you would like to try and say, okay, when you come to work, you leave everything personal at the door. That doesn't work. And when we talk about mental health, that's one of the reasons why it doesn't work, because you come into work, those things don't go away because you're focusing on projects or you're focusing on people, right? And so a lot of people are like, no, I need to be able to figure out how to balance both of those while I'm on the job, off the job, or wherever, so that I can be my best self and I can be, my best professional as well. So yeah, I think a lot of people just realize that, saying leave it at the door is not working. It's not helpful for anyone. And it's just an old school way of thinking.
It is very old. I don't want to completely poo-poo old school, but this is an old school thing that needs to evolve. This is an old school concept that needs to go to the next level. So let's talk about that though, because anyway, this is my opinion. I'd love to get your take. There is a line of what should be shared and what should not. When you're telling your boss, your coworkers, whomever about what's going on, there's still a line. So first of all, what are your thoughts about that? Should it just be all the personal just out there for the world to see, or should there still in fact be a line?
So I'm a little bit on the fence with this one, and I'll tell you why. Because I tend to share more. Some people call it an overshare. I don't think that I'm an oversharer, so to speak. Or at least I know who to overshare with, right? This is how I feel about it. If a person is comfortable sharing whatever with you, like let them be comfortable doing that. Don't judge them for it. Now, if it's something that makes you uncomfortable, of course, you can have that conversation with them and say, hey, you know what, that was a bit much. But I take pride in the fact that people are comfortable telling me, the personal, intricate details of kind of where they're
Right.
because they know I'm not
Right.
going to hold judgment, and they know that they're giving me that information for me to provide some advice or at least have some understanding. And with me personally, and professionally as an empath, I'm very much an empath. More than likely, that information that they share with me is going to be more helpful to them than hurtful. So is there a line? I do believe that there is a line for most people. I think most people can't handle, if someone comes in and says, oh, this weekend, I had this thing to happen. Some people may be like, oh, wait, that's too much, but on the other hand, if that person is comfortable sharing that with you and it's not like a sympathy ploy, because some people do that. Some people just do things to try to get sympathy. Oh, I was late today, but let me tell you what happened this weekend, right? We still should be sensitive to those issues. But if that person is genuinely confiding in you and sharing with you and feeling comfortable doing that, I think it's upon us as leaders to try to find a way to make them comfortable and to be able to accept that. And so again, that's why I say I'm kind of on the line. Like, I get where some people are like, don't tell me about your personal stuff. But at the same time, it's hard to separate it at work.
It is. It is. And so I want to hit on two things. So you hit on, although you didn't use the term and creating that, which is really just a way to say that you feel safe to share and to also dissent if you need to. So that's all psychological safety is. So you did hit on the importance of psychological safety, with which I completely agree, which does require certain vulnerability and ability to listen. The other thing is, you specifically mentioned as a leader or HR professional, that you need to be willing to receive. And you have decided that you are going person of the people. So from that standpoint, yes, you do need to be more open. You do need to have a wide berth, so to speak, of what you can accept. So, and it's different for both, right? So I consult in the same type of stuff, and it's very different because I'm like, I don't want to hear about your weekend. I don't want to hear about your partying. That has nothing to do with what I'm here to do. I do want to hear about, if you have medical stuff going on, if you can affect you as a human. If you have something serious, I've had people come to me about a suicide that happened in their family and all that. That affects their work, those things, so that I can help you, provide resources for you. I'm here for you. Now, if I was their manager, I would also need to be okay with some of them because that's how you bond. That's how you bond to your team. That's how you connect to them. So, but you also need to be respectful, as you said, of each person's individual. And if they stop you and say, I really appreciate that you want to confide in me, but this is not a topic with which I'm comfortable.
Right.
Respect that very quickly. How would you, as a leader, not from the HR perspective, because they pretty much need to, we're going to get to that in a minute, but on the leadership side, how would you recommend that the boundary of, okay, no, this is not something I'm comfortable discussing?
So I would let a person finish. Me personally, I would let a person finish. And I'll give you an example. So I had someone to come and tell me about a very interesting medical situation that they had that is pretty common, but most people don't care to share because some people can see it as embarrassing. And so they came and they shared that with me. And while they were talking to me, I was amazed that they cared enough to share the details. And so, but then I was kind of like, okay, well, they're comfortable enough to share this with me. They probably know that I won't share it, elsewhere or whatever. So when it was done, so I let them finish the conversation, provided the guidance that they were looking for. And then I just let them know, after the fact. And so not the same day. So a couple of days later, I went to the person and I said, hey, I just want to let you know, I really, appreciated the conversation. I appreciate that you have the trust, that trust in me, but you don't have to reveal those specific details to me. I mean, if you want to, that's okay. But, I didn't want the person to feel like they had to tell me those things to get, the guidance or any empathy or sympathy from me in that situation. So I don't recommend as leaders that we do it maybe in that moment. unless it's a trigger. And so let me speak to that a little bit.
Yes, thank you.
Things that are triggers, right? So I'll tell you, I have a trigger, and I'm comfortable sharing this openly. So a lot of people know this. In 2020, my brother and cousin were killed in a car accident. It's my only brother. He's the older brother, same mom, same dad, grew up in the same household, 2 years older than me, big brother. So it's a trigger for me when people are talking to me about like car crashes and things like that. So if someone comes to me and they're wanting to talk to me about, oh, you know, this weekend there was this car crash, it's a trigger for me, because what I start to think about, even more so than listening to what the person is saying, is my experience with my brother's car crash and how he lost his life, and my cousin also lost his life, right? So that's a trigger for me. So what I have to do, and I've learned to do in those situations, is to say, you know, if I feel myself getting a little bit emotional or whatever, I have to let them know, hey, I'm sorry. I lost my brother and a cousin in a car accident, you know, very recently. It's still very fresh to me. So as much as I do want to listen, that is a trigger point for me. And a lot of times I just stop right there. And a lot of times, if they feel comfortable continuing, they will continue. If they don't feel comfortable continuing, they'll say, oh, I this is really what I'm here for, or whatever. I want to give them the option to be able to finish their story, but I don't want them to feel like if I have a tear, it's because they just told me they had a car accident. So I think there's different ways that you can actually approach those situations, but I always believe in transparency. We've talked about this before, Catherine, you and I. Let a person know, hey, this particular thing is a trigger for me. So my response may not be what you're expecting. However, I am still here to help, or, hey, can we follow up, a couple minutes or whatever. Give me time to collect myself. But there's always a way to approach it so that I think both people can be comfortable. Now, on the flip side of that, I know some people may say, well, if I'm coming to you to talk to you about an issue that I have, as a professional and as a leader, you should be able to deal with those triggers. Well, let's talk about the mental health piece, right? You may feel like as a leader and as a leader, we should be able to just deal with it, but we are still humans and we are still people. And so we have to figure out for ourselves and decide for ourselves how we handle those situations. And it's the same, we should have the same expectation of others. So.
Yes, 100%. And I also want to say it takes years upon years upon years to learn to properly hone the skill to handle those types of triggers in certain situations. As easy as, oh, I'm just not going to think about that, or I'm just not going to put myself, no, to truly.
It's unexpected too.
Out of nowhere, they just say, you're like, whoa, okay, not what I was thinking we were going to be talking about today. It is also, in some circumstances, depending on how fresh something may be, it can be appropriate to remove yourself. But unfortunately, right now, this is not the right time for me, but I got you. Here's the right person. Make that intro. Let them handle it. It hasn't happened to me personally, but I have seen situations where that was definitely appropriate. Mm-hmm. And that was the thing. For instance, names or company names on this, but there was an HR professional that I knew who just went through a rape trial with her daughter, and someone came to her about a sexual harassment or sexual. I can't be impartial right now. Mm-hmm. I need to step back. And so she handed that off. And so I went very clear that it is okay to remove yourself if there's something going on. Again, for those mental health reasons, we are still human. We're still people. But I also put a circle. So there are the times when there's a reason to share that information, right? That they need to tell you this. Sometimes, to your point, they can pull back. This you all the details of their lives, and it can actually become inappropriate for work because you can leave yourself open to sexual harassment, non-inclusive, so on and so forth. Getting into politics at work, which please don't.
Yeah,
just put that out there.
I was already shaking my head.
Please don't. No, please do not do that for any reason whatsoever. I don't care what side of the fence you're on, just don't. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about that too. So what is that line? Because there is a difference, or I'm just sharing with you because that's good psychological safety and we just need to grow as a team versus, okay, we do need to stop it here.
Yeah, I think sometimes what people do, so there's a line there too, right? Some people are on that line of, hey, I need to share because I need to feel comfortable or confident knowing that I can be comfortable, sharing this information, with you. But then there's this other side of that line where people are kind of like, I want to pick your brain to see where you stand on this issue to find out if you're an ally or not. And that's where it gets really, really dangerous. And so as leaders, speaking of leaders, as a leader, you have to learn which one is which, right? And I mean, working with people, especially the same people, you can kind of tell if this person is the type who they are genuinely curious and they are, looking for guidance, or if this is a person who kind of likes to kind of argue a little bit and, exert like their opinions.
Kind of stir that pot.
Religion, stir that pot, right? Yeah, stir that pot. And so, you have to determine. And so sometimes you already know, you can tell what's going on, like either in the media or what's going on, in the world. And when you see that person coming, you already know what they're coming for, right? For sometimes though, you do have to just have that open ear and just be very impartial and let that person speak, because there's sometimes most people, I genuinely believe that there are more good than bad in people, right? I do believe that.
That's nice. People, I don't, but I'm glad for you.
Most people don't. I can tell you, most people are like, really? I'm like, yes, I feel like it. I feel like and the reason why I feel that way is because my experiences, even with people who have not been so good, there's usually a reason for that. And when you can kind of get to the reason or have an understanding, like you do see the good in those people. So I genuinely feel that. But a lot of the times the people who are coming and they are genuinely wanting some assistance, like I'm not understanding why a person can feel this way. And I'll give a very, very innocent but very relevant example. I will have, people who are not of color come and ask me, how do I feel about something as a person of color? I don't take offense to it, and I don't immediately think that they're asking this question because they want to argue. I feel like they are asking the question because they want to understand. They want to try to be able to relate.
Right.
That's not the case for everybody, and I know that. But my approach is always going into it that is what they're looking for. Now, again, when you find out otherwise, then you act accordingly. And so when the situation is at work, I feel like we should do the same thing. The whole benefit of the doubt thing.
I agree. Yes, 100%. And you should always, I very much subscribe to the curiosity theory that it is part of, well, factually, it is part of how our brains function and learn. And so it's very important, even in inclusion, answer questions. And I don't want to get into the whole emotional burden and all that kind of discussion, but as much as humanly possible, that's what you want to do. But we all have our days, and give it to say there are certain conversations as a leader that you have to step away from, because if you hear what they're about to say, everybody, for instance, my team would sometimes talk about what they did on the weekends when I was still managing a group where we were all in the same office. And sometimes what they did on the weekend was not the most something that could get them fired if I technically knew about it. So I would just go, hey guys, glad you had a great weekend over here now. And they would kind of giggle and laugh, and they knew what I was doing and it was fine. And you do have to be mindful too, is benign. Other people do not. Mm-hmm. So for instance, be very careful talking about going to the bar to try to hook up. That's not a good work conversation. But be careful talking about drug use, alcohol use, things like that. Even alcohol can make people feel very just, I always tell people, kind of temper those kind of conversations. Your medical stuff, I mean, I am oddly open about my medical stuff. I will get really, personal about things because I think it helps for the conversations in which I'm having them. And as part of my audience, feel comfortable and feel psychological safety to discuss certain topics. But I'm not necessarily going to and go, hey, this is what my bladder is doing, or this, but I do want to say for the people that there's nothing particularly wrong with that conversation, but just do kind of read the room on that one. Read the room.
One thing that I've noticed that I like that people are starting to do is give trigger warnings. I see these more so in writing, but I've also seen a couple in conversations too, where people are like, this is a trigger warning. So if you've had this, and this, you may not want to read this, or, this is a trigger warning. So if you've had experiences with this, just let me know so I won't share. And so I actually like that approach because it shows that the person does want to share this information, but they also want to be sensitive to you and how you may feel about the information that's being shared. And so I think that's very big on individuals who are able to do that.
Yes. Yes, I do. You know what? There are times that I like that approach. I mean, especially at work. I want to throw that 100%. If there's anything that could possibly, be a reasonable or a more common trigger, definitely, definitely vocalize that. I've been blasted because I don't do that with certain things. And I tell people, I want you to be triggered. That's why I'm doing it. You should be triggered by this. You should be upset that this is happening. That's exactly, that's it. And I get both sides, because there are the people that have had recent, very serious trauma, so on and so forth. But sometimes we do need to be uncomfortable too. And that's okay. Not in the workplace. I want to clarify that. Right. Return workplace. Don't do this in the workplace. But on social media, sometimes there can be a reason to just be very blunt about something and just talk about it, just out there. So I do want to talk about too, because this has been something I get asked about a lot, and I'm very curious about your opinion.
Okay.
So I ask a lot about, how do I ask for an accommodation? Like I might be, discriminated against. And maybe they have a boss who's never given them an inkling that that's the case, but they're just scared. What do you do? Because that requires a lot of vulnerability.
This is a very interesting one because it differs based on what the policies or practice, because sometimes it's not a written policy, which it should be, but policies or practices are at the particular company or the employer, right? So some employers will tell the individual to go to their manager and request accommodation. I don't necessarily like that because not all managers are trained to handle accommodations appropriately.
Right.
They don't know where to go to look for resources, right? So me personally, I think that should definitely be like, if you have an accommodation, and I like the fact that some organizations actually have an accommodation team, right?
Yes.
So
yeah.
I think that's awesome. These are people who are basically subject matter experts, or they're working, learning to be, to help people facilitate that process. But for those who don't have that, I think having HR be responsible for that. People who are trained, because I know not every HR is HR, but
yes, that's a whole other show.
That's a whole other show. But yeah, someone who is trained, someone who is compassionate, someone who is understanding, someone who is objective, and someone who knows that the benefit of providing the accommodation far outweighs the disadvantages. That's who should handle those situations. So if a person is afraid, most people tend to do this, one of two things. If they're afraid, they either just say, okay, I'm going to fight my fear and I'm going to talk to the person that my company has told me to talk to. Or what they do is they go and talk to somebody who they're comfortable with. It can be a colleague, it can be a different manager. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just agreeing. Sorry.
It could be a manager, it could be a coworker, a colleague, it could be anyone else that they feel comfortable, going to with that information. I think it says a lot for an individual to not be comfortable going to their HR department manager or supervisor or representative, whomever, with those types of things, because that's exactly who should be equipped with giving them the information and starting.
Yes. Now I am going to interrupt you to hit on that point, because if people don't trust you, that is on you. 100%. You should be out there letting them know that you're advocating for them, making it obvious your stance on things, making it obvious that you're there for them. If you are not, same thing with leaders. If your people won't come talk to you, that's on you. You're doing a bad job.
Right. Absolutely.
That's just it. Period. End of story. And make accommodations. Stop with this, oh, you got to get a doctor's note for every little flipping thing. That's stupid. If it's going to cost you a lot of money, fine. We get that 100%. If it involves a major shift in how you do something, it's going to be really difficult maybe for the rest of the team. Okay, fine. I can see that. But there's no reason on God's green earth to have people filling out all this medical documentation for things that cost you $20 or less, or require just camera off during a meeting or something. Be reasonable.
Right.
Reasonable accommodation. Thank you. Yes, Jinx. It's for real.
Right.
That's why it's called that. It is reasonable. So be reasonable about it. Duh.
Right. I agree 100%. I'm one of those people, like when I come into departments and they're like, hey, yeah, we require them to get a doctor's note for this, and this. And it was like, for a keyboard? Like, for what?
Calm down. No.
Like, why do they have to have a doctor's note for that? Or, for the ergo desk. And I was like, okay, I get that. That's a little bit of
that could be more costly. So that kind of makes some sense.
I get it. But then I find out that you have 20 of them like stocked in a room somewhere. It's like, wait a minute, what?
Oh, well, now we're gonna fight. No, that's just stupid.
Yeah, so but yeah,
out there.
I agree with you. I'm like, don't make things difficult that don't have to be difficult. It just
no.
And it's funny, like we say, so going back to the separating the personal, the home from work, we say that all the time. Once you come to work, you need to separate all of that. Well, you can't. And the reasonable accommodations, the medical things are clear examples of that. So you want me to separate what I have going on at home from what I have going on at work. But then when I come and ask you for a reasonable accommodation, I have to spend my home time to go and get this doctor's note that you're requiring me to have. So, right.
It's just, or even worse, you're wasting my time at work because I have to leave work.
Right.
Doctor, it's kind of nonsense. Like, come on. No, just no to this.
I do get it. I know a lot of companies require it because, so I'll say agree or disagree, but I know a lot of companies require it because they feel like some people who don't need it for a reasonable accommodation, need those things as a reasonable accommodation, just want them. Right. And my question to that is it costing you money? Like, what's the problem with them having it? Like, if everybody said they wanted the ergo desk, is it a problem for them to have it, or are you just reserving it for those individuals who have a reasonable accommodation or a reasonable need for it?
Exactly. If it just makes them happy, who cares? Right. Like, who cares? If it costs, fine. I have no problem with that. But if it's something little, don't be ridiculous. Don't. It's fine. It's fine. Yeah. Just let people have it if it makes them happy. If they're happy,
right?
Psychologically proven. So just let them have it. Who cares? Another one that really gets me with where I feel like my thoughts and or feelings lie very much that companies are messing this up. There's this whole new thing where companies in the application process are asking. They're asking all these questions about how you identify with your gender. I mean, the ADA, I would be very clear, the ADA and EEOC. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about those surveys, which I have a whole other spiel about. But specifically asking all kinds, like socioeconomic background, like all kinds of stuff. And that's about the face I made when I first saw it. I went,
I'm sorry, I don't have a poker face. Let me stop.
You don't need it for this conversation. I'm telling you, I am seeing companies do it. I think it's an attempt to be inclusive. I'm hoping. Okay, I'm trying to give humans the benefit of the doubt because I start thinking, oh, you're trying to just the first thing that comes into my head. And if I'm thinking that, I know candidates do. And I've done several polls on this, and I know for a fact that candidates are thinking that and bailing on this. I was on my show about that when I first brought it up. So what's the front? Because also in this, I'm seeing, let us know if you want an accommodation, let us know this and that. So what are the good things that companies can ask that seem a little bit more personal? And what are the bad, be very damaging?
So going back, and I'm still stuck on, like, I guess I knew a little bit about some of the questions that are being asked, but at the application phase, like, you haven't even determined whether or not you are going to hire this person. And so you're already asking them to reveal those details that they may not be comfortable sharing. Like, that doesn't say a whole lot about, you as a company and, making someone feel included. And I guess to your point, maybe they do feel like, oh, well, we're wanting to let you know that we care about, the LGBTQ community. We care if you are, a veteran or a disabled person or whatever the case is. But that's not what it says. Most people are going to look at that and say, oh, you're trying to exclude me.
Yes.
You don't want to hire me because I'm LGBTQ and you're not LGBTQ,
yes.
Accommodating. You may not be, won't want to hire me because I have a disability or because I need a reasonable accommodation. So
right.
Yeah, those are questions. Those are things that you find out after a person is working for your company.
Or during the interview process.
Right.
So
well, I think too, so some questions I feel like even in the interview process could be off-putting because it's like, why do you need to know?
Yes.
You have a really good explanation, a true legitimate explanation as to why you're asking the question. But for example, like the reasonable accommodation thing, I have absolutely no problem with that simply because if you need a reasonable accommodation to proceed through the process, that's something that needs to be known, right?
I have noticed that's on when you make an appointment with me, it says fully inclusive. Please let me know if there's anything I can do to better accommodate you. But that's during the interview process, not the application.
Not the application process.
Right.
And I think some people will ask that question if they feel like the person needs certain types of assistance throughout the application. So I can understand that part, but I think just take a little bit more time and effort to say, and it could be a 2-sentencer. We understand, this. If you need, like, if this is something that you need, please let us know. So it's not just blanket, do you need an accommodation? Because people are going to think that if I need one, you're not going to provide it to me. I think you're mute.
Oh, nope, I'm not. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I'm having technology glitches. That wasn't my mute button this time. That was just glitch. I have technological problems.
I have them too.
Thank you. So it's one of those things. I don't ask 3 different ways. I understand that 3 different times in 3 different ways. And because then I am going, now what's your motivation? I have seen multiple, because I still get out and apply for jobs just to kind of see what's going to happen, right? Just to be like, let's see what these people are experiencing right now. And so I go in there and I apply, and it will ask me my race 3 different times, my gender several different times, which they also still seem to be confused about gender and sex, which that's a whole other show. But then there is, they'll ask you more than once. They'll ask for, and I'm going, okay, that you're asking this more than one time. So that's another thing to be very aware of, I think, is make sure that you're actually checking your application. Make sure that you're having people go through it who are from different groups and get their feedback. Don't just guess. Don't just guess at what you think will work, or get a true inclusion expert in there to look at it. And not especially only works with this or that, or, but who really knows inclusion as a whole, to give those individual groups as well and see how they respond to it. That's my feedback. What do you think?
Right. No, I agree. And I think sometimes in some employers' defense, I think what they think is if we show on the application or from the very beginning that, we are considering these things, it's going to make us, appear to be, even if that is their true intent, but it's going to make us appear to be, more inclusive. Right.
Right.
But this is what I always say, and you and I, Catherine, have talked about this before, ask the question, like, you can ask the question of people who are, within your company. You can ask the question of people outside your company. You can go and research. There are surveys on this stuff to kind of tell you what makes people feel comfortable and what makes people like take it running,
Yeah, I go, yeah.
And so, but I do, one of the things that I saw that was really awesome, I can't remember the name of the company, but in their application process, I was working with an individual. I'm helping them with their resume, and they copied the application, and the application stated, we provide blah, 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 blah. It was like all these things that they actually provide in terms of accommodations. If you need an accommodation, or if you see something, or if you need something that's not listed here, please let us know.
Yes, right? All of the yes to that.
Yes, and I was like, that is so cool. I thought it was
Yeah,
really
that's
cool
cool.
because if you tell me, if you're asking me, do you need something, but then you're telling me that you provide it, that's two different things. And so
Right.
I felt a whole lot less like, or less as if they were going to discount me because I needed those things, because you're already
Yes.
letting me know it's something that you provide. So I thought that
Right.
was really, really big on that company.
100% time, and I've done posts about this, have a standard accommodation list and then have like a fill in the blank option kind of a thing. Like, just tell us, we got you. Because when you have that list and you've put in that thought, it makes all the difference. And with that, we are way over, which I don't mind at all. I could talk to you all day long, but unfortunately, our viewers. So, what are your final thoughts before we go?
Final thoughts. It's very hard to separate the personal from the work, because you go home and you think about work, you come to work and you think about home. So even though some things are personal, they still find their way into the workplace. As leaders, as professionals, we have a responsibility to, learn ways to help people when they do want to share personal things, but also to be able to let them know when, hey, that's probably not the conversation that, we need to be having.
Absolutely. And when you have somebody who's going through a trauma, difficult, find resources for them and help them. It may not be the appropriate time for them to be at work. That's fine. Lose over it. Find resources. Be helpful. Be a leader. That's your job, by the way. If you're a leader, your job is to help your people.
Absolutely. I agree.
And with that, thank you so very much for joining me. It's
Thank
always
you.
a pleasure. Thank you, everyone. Same time, same place next week. Oh, and connect to us on LinkedIn.